Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ezra Alexander, and tonight I am going to be getting into this book right here. There's a lot of controversy around this particular individual, and upon completion of this book, I think you'll understand why, and have a better understanding as to why. I was going to do this live, but I need to have a webcam for the computer to do that, so bear with me, and yeah. I know that the angle's not the best or whatever, but really it's more so the message. So, without further ado, let us begin. Everything you need to know, but have never been told, by you-know-who. Not me, David Icke. To Jamie and Gareth for their brilliant work in support of what I do. To experience what I have liked and what I have not liked. It all leads to wisdom if we allow it to. I've looked at life from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow, it's life's illusions I recall. I really don't know life at all. Joni Mitchell. And now I understand what you tried to say to me, how you suffered for your sanity, how you tried to set them free. They would not listen. They did not know how. Perhaps they'll listen now. Don McLean. Pity the nation. Pity the nation whose people are sheep, and whose shepherds mislead them. Pity the nation whose leaders are liars, whose sages are silenced, and whose bigots haunt the airwaves. Pity the nation that raises not its voice, except to praise conquerors and acclaim the bully as hero, and aims to rule the world with force and by torture. Pity the nation that knows no other language but its own, and no other culture but its own. Pity the nation whose breath is money, and sleeps the sleep of the too well-fed. Pity the nation, oh, pity the people who allow their rights to erode, and their freedoms to be washed away. My country, tears of thee, sweet land of liberty. Lawrence Ferlinghetti. No society wants you to become wise. It is against the investment of all societies. If people are wise, they cannot be exploited. If they are intelligent, they cannot be subjugated. They cannot be forced into a mechanical life, to live like robots. They will assert their individuality. They will have the fragrance of rebellion around them. They will like to live in freedom. Freedom comes with wisdom, intrinsically. They are inseparable, and no society wants people to be free. The communist society, the fascist society, the capitalist society, the Hindu, the Mohammedan, the Christian, no society would like people to use their own intelligence, because the moment they start using their intelligence, they become dangerous. Dangerous to the establishment. Dangerous to the people who are in power. Dangerous to the haves. Dangerous to all kinds of oppression, exploitation, suppression. Dangerous to the churches, dangerous to the states, dangerous to the nations. In fact, a wise man is a fire, alive, aflame. But he cannot sell his life. He cannot serve them. He would like rather to die than to be enslaved. Osho. The definition. I want to make it clear before we start what the title represents. Everything you need to know but have never been told does not refer to all that people need to know in terms of information and knowledge. How could you put that between two covers? Religious books claim to do this, but they are works of self-delusion and perceptual imprisonment. Everything you need to know in this case refers to the information necessary to open entirely new ways of thinking and perceiving reality, both in the seen and unseen, from which everything else will come. This book is a start, not a finish. It is written in layers with information placed upon information that together reveals the picture by connecting the parts. The parts are fascinating, but the picture is devastating. Prepare for a perception reboot. On the road to now. Your assumptions are your windows on the world. Scrub them off every once in a while, or the light won't come in. Isaac Asimov. I'm closing in on 30 years since I was first dubbed the maddest man in Britain, and most other places come to that. Newspaper headlines delighted in my alleged madness, and I was a comedian's dream. Mention of my name was enough to get a laugh with no joke necessary. I was the joke. But, as it turns out, they were the joke all along. They didn't know, and neither did I, that what they perceived as madness was a mind emerging from the collective madness, which is called normality. The madness that masquerades as sanity. The coma sleep that believes it is wide awake. There are none so enslaved as those who wrongly believe they are free, and none so crazy as those who wrongly believe they are sane. Today, as truly intelligent people look in my direction from literally all over the world, it can safely be said that rumors of my madness were greatly exaggerated. For what is the perception of madness but the perceiver's perception of sanity? What is that perception but what collective society has decreed sanity to be? And what is that collective society but they who control, influence, and police opinion to manipulate the norms that they then decree? Sanity and insanity are defined by perception and not necessarily by reality. Human history is awash with those dubbed mad and dangerous who were to be feted as ahead of their time, often long after they had passed. Perceptions of sanity and insanity are not even static, and they change as knowledge moves on. Tell a caveman that it's possible to fly to the moon, and he would call you crazy. Tell someone today that it's not possible, and they will say the same. It is an extraordinary and incredibly debilitating human trait that this cognitive dissonance between what we call past and present. People are so willing to mock and condemn those long gone who ridiculed or even murdered the visionaries who could see then what is now considered to be obvious. But the same people are so unwilling to acknowledge how they themselves react the same way today to those who see the world differently to them and the norms that mold and solidify their sense of reality. Minds that genuinely seek understanding come from the immovable foundation that they don't know at all. They are humble and wise enough to realize that humanity knows an almost incomprehensibly small fraction of what there is to know. Thus, their minds are open at all times to all possibility. I don't mean only the possibilities that never challenge and expose ingrained religious, cultural, scientific, and societal beliefs. I mean all possibility, with none excluded. To consider all possibility, and not only belief system possibility, is, to much of humanity, like garlic to a vampire. Unyielding perceptions are recycled and confirmed by sheer unquestioned repetition. While newspaper headlines told the world of my madness, I was, ironically, becoming sane. Amid historic levels of ridicule and abuse that I faced in the 1990s, I was walking into the light of freedom, real freedom, where I could think the unthinkable and say the unsayable and not give a damn what people made of it. How many allow themselves that priceless gift? And yet, it is there for the taking whenever they choose. If I can do it, so can everyone. Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu said, "Care about people's approval, and you will be their prisoner." I was born in Leicester, England. Side note, y'all, if I butcher these names, please forgive me. Okay, I'm doing my best. I was born in Leicester, England, on April 29th, 1952, and grew up on a council estate in a very different world to the one we see today. There was no internet, computers, smartphones, or tablets, and only one television channel until I was 3. Not that we could afford a TV until years later or even needed one. We had next to no money, but I never felt deprived. You made your own fun and followed your own interests. They weren't delivered through a TV screen or the latest app. Life was simpler then, and you had more time to think, ponder, and daydream. My default state. I can now see patterns in my life, with the perspective of hindsight, that were guiding me through the maze since childhood. But at that time, they appeared to be only random events, successes, and failures. I see them very differently today. Football, soccer, was my passion as a kid, and steam trains, and I set out to be a professional footballer. A series of coincidences and bits of luck gave me that chance, and all was going well until rheumatoid arthritis ended my career at age 21. Arthritis first appeared when I was 15, just 6 months into my career as a goalkeeper with Coventry City, and became progressively worse, affecting more joints. I played in pain for years before it became too much. My second choice of career had always been journalism, and that's where I headed next. I set my sights on being a television presenter with the BBC Sports Department. Although given my circumstances, I was told this would be almost impossible, as many had said about professional football. I had left school at 15 to join Coventry and had no educational qualifications, let alone a university degree. I was advised that getting into journalism would therefore be very difficult. But the pattern repeated itself with more coincidences and bits of luck that led me into newspapers, radio, regional television, and eventually to be a national television presenter with the BBC Sport. The pattern was never more obviously at work than when I joined the British Green Party as a member of a local group that I started on the Isle of Wight, where I live off the south coast of England. Within weeks, through more coincidences and inexplicable happenings, I had been elected a national speaker representing the party's views in the media. It was now that the patterns in my life of setting a goal and then doors synchronistically opening and closing to achieve that goal could no longer be denied. What was going on? I had no idea. Figure 1. My life seemed to be a series of random events until the recurring pattern became hard to deny. By the late 1980s, I had tired of the television world, which I found vacuous and full of its own self-importance. This phase was thankfully coming to an end with my life about to change dramatically. I began to have strange experiences at the turn of 1989, in the sense that when I was alone in a room, there always seemed to be someone or something there. A presence, I guess you would call it. The feeling became stronger and the presence ever more tangible throughout the year until I had to address it. I was sitting on a bed in a London hotel room in early 1990 while still working for the BBC. The presence was so obvious that I said, if there is anybody here, will you please contact me because you are driving me up the wall. A few days later, I was in an Isle of Wight newspaper shop with my then young son, Gareth, when suddenly I found myself unable to move my feet. It was like magnets were pulling them to the floor. As I was trying to understand what was happening, a voice, actually a very strong thought form, passed through my mind which said, "Go and look at the books on the far side." My feet unfroze, and I walked in a bewildered daze towards the little bookstand where I had only seen romantic novels before. They were still there, but in among them was a book that took my eye because it was so different. It was called Mind to Mind, and written by professional psychic medium, Betty Shine. Little Miss Betty Shine down here. As soon as I saw the word psychic, I wondered if maybe she could explain the presence I was feeling. I read the book in 24 hours, contacted her, and made an appointment. I told her nothing about what was happening to me and said only that I wanted to see her, or to see if her Hands-on healing, in exchange of energy, would help my arthritis. This was of secondary importance to me, however. Would she pick up anything around me that could account for what had been happening for the last year? I saw Betty 4 times, and the last 2 visits changed my life forever. I was lying on a medical-type bench on visit 3 while she was treating my left knee, when I felt something like a spider's web on my face. I remembered how she described in her book having this same feeling when other dimensions of reality were preparing to communicate. Psychic or inter-reality connections are made at one level, electromagnetically, and my spider's web was electromagnetic energy of the kind that makes the hair on your neck and arms stand up among an excited crowd or in a haunted house. I didn't mention the web that I was feeling, but a few seconds later, Betty Shine pushed her head back and said, "Wow, this is powerful. I'll have to close my eyes for this one." She said she was seeing a figure in her mind that was asking to communicate with me. They knew that I wanted them to contact me, but the time wasn't right, Betty told me, although she knew nothing of what had happened in the London hotel room. She began to repeat the words that were given to her. "He is a healer who is here to heal the earth, and he will be world famous. He is still a child spiritually, but he will be given the spiritual riches. Sometimes he will say things and wonder where they came from. They will be our words. Knowledge will be put into his mind, and at other times he will be led to knowledge. He was chosen as a youngster for his courage. He has been tested and has passed all the tests. He was led into football to learn discipline, but when that was learned, it was time to move on. He also had to learn how to cope with disappointment, experience all the emotions, and how to get up and get on with it. The spiritual way is tough, and no one makes it easy. He will always have what he needs. This could have been wants, but no more. He will face enormous opposition, but we will always be there to protect him." A week later, I returned for my last visit, and more information was given to me in the same way. One man cannot change the world, but one man can communicate the message that will change the world. Don't try to do it all alone. Go hand in hand with others, so you can pick each other up as you fall. He will write 5 books in 3 years. I did. Politics is not for him. He is too spiritual. Politics is anti-spiritual and will make him very unhappy. It did. He will leave politics. He doesn't have to do anything. It will happen gradually over a year. It did. There will be a different kind of flying machine, very different from the aircraft of today. Time will have no meaning. Where you want to be, you will be. I met another medium soon after that last meeting with Betty Shine, who gave me similar information, which included: arduous thinking is not necessary. The path is already mapped out. You only have to follow the clues. We are guiding you along a set path. It was all arranged before you incarnated. The point about following the clues is exactly what has happened. Yet another series of coincidences led me to Peru in early 1991. My amazing visit over the best part of 3 weeks, with countless more coincidences and synchronicities, culminated on a hillside overlooking the ancient ruins of Silistani, 13,000 feet above sea level, in the Andes near the city of Puno on the shores of Lake Titicaca. I had spent an hour walking around the ruins, admiring the stunning landscape, and then headed back to Puno in a minibus taxi with the driver and a Peruvian guide. A short distance down the road, I was daydreaming, as usual, and gazing at a hill to my right when the words, "Come to me. Come to me. Come to me," began repeating in my mind. I asked the driver to stop, and strong intuition told me that I needed to climb the hill. I said I would be back shortly, but I was more than an hour because of what happened. I stopped among some large stones, that were no longer there on my return in 2012. My feet began to feel as they did in the newspaper shop, magnetically sucked to the spot, although this time with far greater power. I felt a drill-like sensation on the top of my head, and then a flow of energy from my head through my body to my feet and into the ground. Another flow came the other way. My arms stretched out at 45 degrees towards the sky when I had made no conscious decision to do so. Then a voice or very clear thought passed through my mind which said, "It will be over when you feel the rain." This sounded utterly crazy as I stood under a cloudless Peruvian sky and a ferociously hot sun. The energy passing through my body with my arms still in the air became so strong that I was shaking, as if subjected to an ongoing electrical shock. There's a picture of him recreating it down at the bottom. I would move in and out of conscious awareness with my focus disappearing out there and then returning. During one of the conscious moments, I saw a light gray mist over the mountains way in the distance, and very quickly the mist became darker. Blimey, I thought, it is raining over there. The storm came out of the mountains towards me in a ridiculously short time, and I watched in some shock as a deluge of stair-rod rain swept across the land in front of me. By now, my body was really shaking from the impact of the energy passing through me until wham! The rain hit me and I was drenched in an instant. With that, the energy stopped and I was standing there with jelly legs and my shoulders were agony after almost an hour stretched out above my head. I felt nothing when it was all going on, but my God, I did now. I had no idea what had happened, but the consequences were soon on public display. I returned to Britain with information and concepts pouring into my conscious mind as if a bubble or dam had burst, and the universe and his mate were coming in. My brain basically froze for 3 months in the way that a computer freezes when asked to process too much data at the same time. I went on primetime television, still in freeze mode, trying to understand what was happening to me. That interview triggered levels of mass ridicule that few can have experienced. I saw very clearly and constantly that those who ridicule others are always the most ignorant and stupid. Big mouths and empty brains obviously come as a pair. I couldn't go anywhere without being laughed at and ridiculed, and every bridge to my old life was ablaze. I can't say that it wasn't difficult in the extreme, but you could have offered to take everything away and plant me back where I was before, throw $1 million in the bank for luck, and I would still have turned you down. Everything before me said that I had destroyed myself, but something deep within me knew this was going somewhere, even if I had no idea exactly where. For 3 months after Peru, I lived my life in a bewildered daze, like someone dropped into a strange alien world without a map or compass. Then over a few days, everything began to unfreeze. I was David again, but not really. To those who knew me, I appeared to be the same man I had been before the funny time. This may have been true outwardly, but I was not seeing the same world that I had before Peru. My mind had been open, and I saw reality in a very different way. Before Peru, I had seen dots. Now I saw pictures and how everything connected. My experience has been that life gives you your greatest gifts brilliantly disguised as your worst nightmare. And so it was with the mass and incessant ridicule that set me free of the prison that most people live in, the fear of what other people think. This was so essential for what was to come with the communication of information way beyond the norms of human society, which continues to this day. From this post-Peru period especially, my life became an incredible synchronistic adventure as information would come to me in the form of people, books, documents, and personal experience. It was like some unseen force was handing me pieces in a puzzle, and that quote from 1990 captures the theme perfectly. Arduous seeking is not necessary. The path is already mapped out. You only have to follow the clues. We are guiding you along a set path. It was all arranged before you incarnated. Information communicated through Betty Shine proved just as accurate. Sometimes he will say things and wonder where they came from. They will be our words. Knowledge will be put into his mind, and at other times he will be led to knowledge. This is precisely what has happened since 1990, as I have delved ever deeper into the rabbit hole of human control and manipulation. The information has even come in an order that made it easiest to comprehend, and there has been so much to comprehend across a great swath of subjects that appear on the surface not to be connected but fundamentally are. For the first few years, the focus was largely on a network of global families manipulating events and enforcing their will on human society. From the mid to late 1990s, revelations about a non-human dimension to this network were given to me. And since the early 2000s, the theme has been the illusory nature of physical reality and ever more detail about the world we think we live in. But don't. Each stage has taken the same pattern. First, the new theme would emerge, followed by information from all directions relating to that theme as if someone had pressed a button. As each new stage begins, the previous ones still continue, and this has demanded the processing and fitting together of phenomenal amounts of information across a whole spectrum of subjects, both ancient and modern. Day after day, year after year, I have walked out of my little office in the early evening with my brain aching and begging for mercy. But the older I have got, and the more I have done it, the easier the processing has become. I hope that I stand as living proof to people that no matter what is thrown at you over whatever period, you cannot be stopped unless you stop yourself. You have the power over your life, and you simply have to take it back from those who you think have the power. The human power / no power dynamic is just a confidence trick, a mind game. And we need to see through the illusion that humanity believes to be so real. If you refuse to give up, feel sorry for yourself, and run away, you will get somewhere. You have to. Amid all the ridicule and abuse, I have written a stream of books which are read all over the world, and I have talked to ever bigger audiences all over the world. What happened to that nutter we said had gone mad? How come so many are now listening to what he says? What? Why? How come? I didn't quit, and I never will. That's how come. The mainstream media, locked away in their time warp, still portray me as the man who existed for just 3 months, nearly 30 years ago. And the same is the case with those who get their views and opinions from that media. The truth is very different, as anyone new to my work is about to find out. Why do we live on such a planet of tears when life could be and should be so wonderful? There is an answer, and here it is.